Almost everyone is familiar with Kitsune, the shape-shifting fox of Japanese folklore. However, not everyone knows the creature's legend got its start in China. In the earlier Chinese version, the Hulijing is not the same as the Kitsune. No matter how we picture the abilities and the magical nature of the Kitsune, the name itself simply translates as fox. In Japanese folklore, almost all animals can shapeshift. That was definitely not the case in China, and Hulijing does not translate as simply fox. The actual translation is fox spirit or fox essence. As the name implies, these are not ordinary foxes. They are believed to be, through long years of training and cultivation, highly skilled in the areas of medicine and magic, to name two. They can also shapeshift with the best of them, and their relationship with humans is best described as predator and prey. This especially applies to human males, for reasons we'll get to later. But again, not always. There is one type of Hulijing that was invariably deadly, and we'll talk about that one later. For now, we'll cover an account or two of a more benevolent fox spirit. Once there was a poor scholar who was perhaps overly fond of drinking, especially near bedtime as it helped him to sleep. One night he woke up early and realized he wasn't alone. He turned down the cover to find a drunken fox sleeping it off, with one of the scholar's now empty wine bottles beside it. Rather than getting angry, the scholar said something to the effect of a drinking companion. "I've always wanted one of those." So he covered the fox up again and let it sleep there until morning, when the fox, as they often did, assumed the form of another young man and thanked the poor scholar profusely for not cutting its head off while it was helpless. The scholar dismissed that. "I am fond of drinking as well. Why would I harm a kindred soul?" He then suggested they become drinking companions, and the fox agreed. The next evening, the scholar prepared some good wine ahead of time. When the fox arrived and sampled the wine, it was impressed. "I must repay you for your generosity," his host demurred, but the fox insisted. He instructed the scholar to go down a certain road and look in a certain place. The next morning, the scholar later did as the fox directed and found 2 silver ingots, with which he bought some food to share with his friend, and, of course, more wine. Later, the fox told him of a hidden vault in the scholar's backyard, which proved to be filled with coins. The fox continued to find ways to enrich his friend, including sage business advice, so that many years later, the scholar died a happy and wealthy man. The previous account is far from typical, but it is not unique. Here is another. There was a young man named Shang Shu who lived alone. His friends chided him for it, asking, "Aren't you afraid of fox spirits or ghosts?" Shu scoffed, telling them if it was a male fox, he had a sword, and if it was a female ghost or fox, he would invite the lady in. Seeing his attitude, his friends decided to play a trick on him, and they hired a young woman to carry it out. That evening, she appeared at Shu's door and knocked. When he asked who it was, she replied, "A ghost," and Shu was terrified and did not open the door. When he told his friends what happened, they laughed at him. Shu resolved not to be fooled a second time. When months later, another female visitor arrived at his door, Shu assumed it was his friends trying to prank him again, so this time he cheerfully invited her in. A beautiful young woman then entered his home, and Shu was entranced. When Shu asked her name, she said it was Lotus Fragrance and that she was a sing-song girl, which was a type of entertainer, especially for male clients. She was indeed entertained, and the two became lovers. After their first time together, she would visit him every 3 days or so. Late one evening, while Lotus Fragrance was away for an extended time, a young woman entered his rooms. At first, he thought it was Lotus Fragrance, but soon realized it was a stranger. She was young and delicate with long black hair and flowing sleeves. She moved so gracefully that she almost appeared to be floating, and Shu feared that she must be a fox spirit. She quickly moved to set his mind at ease. She identified herself as a member of a very respectable family, the Li, and said that she had heard of his taste and refinement and only wished to meet him. One thing led to another, and soon Li was also sharing his bed. When they parted, she gave him one of her dainty slippers, saying he need only think of her while he held it, and she would come to him. The slipper and the fact that Li could enter his home whenever she wished really should have been a clue, but apparently, he wasn't interested in spoiling a good thing. While Lotus Fragrance was away, the young man and Li slept together almost every night. When Lotus Fragrance returned, she knew something was wrong. She had lost weight and appeared to have a wasting sickness. After some probing questions, she found out about Lee, and she assumed she was simply jealous, but Lotus Fragrance suspected Lee was a ghost. When the two women finally confronted each other, Lee in turn accused Lotus Fragrance of being a Hulijing. It turns out both were correct. Lotus Fragrance explained that this was the reason she always allowed 3 days or more between their trysts. The thing both female fox spirits and ghosts had in common was that they were creatures of powerful yin energy. This tended to drain men of their health and vitality, especially when they were intimate. However, by allowing some time for Sho to recover, Lotus Fragrance carefully avoided harming him. By contrast, Lee in her ignorance and enthusiasm was killing Sho, though that was never her intention. It took the combined efforts of both the ghost and the fox spirit to cure Shu's condition. In time, the fox spirit and the ghost became friends in their common ground of shared affection for Sho. Later, the ghost possessed the body of a young woman who had recently died and was thus reincarnated. In time, Shu married both women. There were further complications, but nothing that goodwill and patience could not reveal a remedy. As you can tell from the previous two accounts, the personality and desires of the individual Hulijing goes a long way to determine the nature of its relationship to humans. And not all spirit foxes had good intentions. Now we come to the deadliest Hulijing of all, the heavenly fox. Despite the name, the heavenly fox has a larger body count than any other, and that doesn't exclude the man-eating Juweihu, or nine-tailed fox. A fox who reaches the age of 50 gains the ability to transform into a human woman. A fox who reaches the age of 100 years can transform into a handsome young man or lovely woman at will. A fox who reaches the age of 1,000 years, however, becomes a heavenly fox, an immortal of great power, able to commune with the gods themselves. From the Hechuan Changchai of Qiuopu, a scholar and Taoist of the late 2nd and early 3rd century. See, a Hulijing is long-lived as foxes go, but they are not immortal. However, they do have a path to reach that state, as the illustrious Qiuopu noted above. All they have to do is survive for 1,000 years, right? Simple. In the same sense that moving a mountain is simple, what it's not is easy. Here's where we get to the devil in the details. Remember in the second story above when I mentioned yin energy? Yin and yang are the two main forces in ancient Chinese cosmology. Yin energy is receptive, retractive, and associated with the moon. Yang energy is active, repelling, and associated with the sun. Sometimes they are referred to as the female and male principles, but that's oversimplifying it. Regardless, harmony requires that both be in balance. Hulijing and ghosts are absolutely loaded with yin. Energetically, they are out of balance, which is why close contact with someone with yang energy, usually a male, allows the flow of yang from the unwitting donor to the receiver. That energy doesn't simply disappear. It goes to strengthen the receiver, in this case, the spirit fox. I think you see where this is headed. By draining their victim's yang energy, the Hulijing prolongs its own life, as a ghost in that same situation would gain more life and be a little bit closer to alive. What Lotus Fragrance did in careful measure and Lee did with reckless abandon, a Hulijing on the path to becoming a heavenly fox and immortal would do with calculated efficiency. So, how many dead lovers would the spirit fox need to achieve its goal? 100? 1,000? More? Depends on the Hulijing's constitution and patience, really, but eventually it would get there, achieve its goal and become immortal, and likely not think twice about what it took to get there. After all, it didn't pay the price.